Hello everybody, it's Brett here, Lionheart84. Now, slightly different video today. This is one that a lot of my UK subscribers have been waiting for, and it is aimed at my UK subscribers. Obviously, if anybody finds the video interesting from other areas, you're more than welcome to listen. And if you're into plant unboxings, you might prefer to skip towards the end of the video, where there is actually a few plants that I have a look at that I've imported. Now, the reason I made this video is because I decided to take the plunge and try and import some plants from Europe, or I mean, obviously you could try from other countries, but it's become a very difficult thing to do now. Sorry if the light happens to start getting a bit odd in here. It's been sort of raining all morning, and then the sun's trying to come out and it's doing strange things as it shines through the windows. So I may fade in and out. Now, I decided to take the plunge and try and legally import some plants from, in my case, from Europe, or part of Europe, from the Canary Islands. Now, you've got two options when you're bringing in plants. There's the legal option and there's the illegal option. Now, I wouldn't encourage anybody to particularly try the illegal one, but if you are thinking of buying perhaps a single small plant, perhaps a 12-inch, 30-centimetre plant in the form of a rooted cutting, or a young air layer, or even a seedling grown plant, there are a number of buyers around the world, in South America, North America, Europe, the Far East, who may be prepared to send the plant to you. Sorry, the light's still playing up at the moment. I can see myself fading in and out, but at least you can hear me. There are a number of growers who may be prepared to post you quite happily single plants at your risk. Now, if you can imagine, if you're bringing in a single plant that's in perhaps a cardboard tube or a cardboard oblong, it's quite likely that it will escape the notice of customs, because it'll just come in through the normal postal methods. Now, even single plants need to be accompanied by a phytosanitary certificate to be brought in legally and should be inspected. But clearly, if it just comes in a tube that looks like it's got a poster in it, and it gets through customs without, or through the postal system without them noticing, your plant may well arrive safely within a week or two of you ordering it. And once you've got it, you've got it. However, I should warn you that if anybody decides to look inside the packaging and they see a plant in there, it's 100% sure the plant will be confiscated and destroyed. It won't be passed on to you unless it's got a phytosanitary certificate. So just be warned, if you wouldn't wish to buy that single guava from Thailand or whatever. Let's just pause this a minute. Sorry, I had to pause that a second because I noticed the memory was getting very low on the camera and I had to delete some older videos. Yeah, so as I was saying, if you want to bring in a particular guava, or blackberry jam fruit, or ice cream bean, or jaboticab, or whatever from Thailand or South America, and you're prepared to take a risk on a single plant in a tube, it may well get through and you might receive it. I mean, the problem is these plants from places like Thailand nowadays are costing sort of £80 to £100 for a young, immature seedling or rooted cutting, and it's a lot of money to lose if it gets disposed of by customs when it arrives here. Plus, the chance of them surviving are pretty thin, because it's such a shock to a young plant to be sort of transplanted, probably bare root or in a sort of a damp medium, and changing from the climate and the conditions they've been growing into over here. There's actually very little chance of those plants ever surviving unless you can give them the perfect growing conditions here to get them established. So I decided that the better way to try and do this was to bring in a batch of tropical fruit trees from a supplier that was prepared to supply the phytosanitary certificates now required by this country. Now, that's easier said than done. There are some suppliers in America who I believe will meet the criteria, and there are almost none in Europe, but one of the ones that will are Canarias in the Canary Islands. So that's canarias.com, which is quite a large tropical fruit supplying country, and they claim to be able to ship worldwide. So I approached them, asked them if they could provide the necessary paperwork to bring plants to the UK, and they assured me that they could. Now, there are quite a number of tropical fruit growing nurseries in Europe, but they're not prepared to supply us here because they don't want to go to the trouble of producing phytosanitary certificates. Now, one of the problems with phytosanitary certificates is that the certificates have to be issued by the appropriate plant health department in the country, and it involves, it does mean that the nursery has to be inspected regularly. I'm not sure if it's once every month or once every 3 months, to ensure that they haven't got any of the pests and diseases among their plants that are covered by the plant health certificates. Now that costs them a fair bit of money, and for the few plants they supply to countries like the UK and other countries outside Europe, most of them feel it's just not worth the hassle of doing it. Now, Canarias have been shipping worldwide for some time, so they have regular plant inspectors in their nursery, and therefore are able to order phytosanitary certificates from the appropriate plant authorities in the Spanish government or the Canarian government. Now, the one that obviously I had to do quite a bit of research into this to see what was involved. Now, with the phytosanitary certificates, you only require one per shipment. It's not one per plant. So if you're whether you're bringing in sort of 3 plants or a lorry load of plants, you only actually need the one health inspection to be carried out. So you know, the cost doesn't escalate, but there are other costs involved, and then the problems are other problems and costings involved are going to be to do with the cost of shipping, minimum order values, etc. So I've made some notes because hopefully I won't forget everything, but it is not a simple process. There's an awful lot that can go wrong, and there are a lot of delays that are likely to crop up, and a lot of problems when they come here. So it's not a straightforward case of just ordering 3 or 4 plants from your approved nursery and then a week later them turning up here. There's a lot of issues that people aren't aware of, some of which I'll forget, but I'll try and cover most of them. I'll just have to hope that I don't forget as I run through my list. So the reason I chose Canarias is, as I said, they do say that they will ship to the UK, and I asked them if they could provide the appropriate phytosanitary certificates, which I've got here, which I'll be showing you in a little while, and they said yes. However, the problems don't start there. The first problem with someone like Canarias is if they have a minimum order value in terms of plants, which currently for international shipping is €150. So let's say £150. We'll just round it up slightly. It's obviously slightly less than that. Now that will probably, in the case of Canarias, probably equates to about three plants roughly, because the plants are between sort of 40 and €50 each. So you're looking at 3, possibly 4 plants if you get small ones. The plants aren't particularly cheap, and of course the pound-euro exchange rate is not favourable at the moment. But the other problem you've got with the Canary Islands is the shipping cost to the UK. Now, you can't send them by land. It would take far too long for the plants to get here. They're flowing in by air. So for €150 worth of 3 or 4 plants, you're probably looking at another €140 to €150 in transport, because roughly the plants are about 3 to 4 kilos each, and they have to go into a large box. You've got the cost of packing, you've then got the cost of the phytosanitary certificates, and in my case you can also have the plants treated for pests and diseases, which is another extra charge, and of course the any taxes on them in Spain. So I will go into what plants roughly the plants order came to, and roughly what the other costings were. I haven't got the invoice with me, but I know off the top of my head roughly what they are. Now, I decided, because it's such a high cost to ship the plants, it's actually more cost effective if you get more than the 3 or 4 to reach the minimum order value, because the cost of shipping doesn't escalate as quickly. It doesn't escalate as quickly as it's not the same cost per plant. As you get more plants, if you see what I mean, the cost doesn't go up as quickly. And I also decided I didn't want to go through the process, which is a lot of stress and aggravation. I didn't want to go through the process 3 or 4 times. So I decided to take a chance and buy all of the plants I wanted in one go and be done and dusted, because I felt that it's quite unlikely that I'd want to bring any more plants in. So what I decided to do was order 8 plants. Now, the total order was something like about €500, I think, which comprised of about £300 worth, €300 roughly of plants, €200 for the shipping, and the cost of the phytosanitary certificate was included, although I did pay extra to have the plants treated, sprayed as well before they left, which is meant to look good for the UK import authorities. So the process basically is you choose the plants you want, and then you wait 2 or 3 weeks until they get round to putting the order together and then shipping them here. But that's when the problem started. Now, there are certain things to bear in mind now. There are various plants that are illegal currently to import into the UK. So it is worth, I mean, the Canaries should know which ones you can or can't import. They informed me that you now can't bring avocado plants into the UK at all. Now, the reason for that is there is a virus that is currently present in a lot of avocado varieties in Europe, which can spread to other members of the laurel family, like obviously laurel and bay, because avocados are in the same family as laurel. So the UK government has banned the import of avocado plants. It doesn't, of course, refer to fruit. So I wanted to bring in an avocado, I think the variety was Bacon, and Canary said they wouldn't be able to ship it because if it arrived here, even with a Phyto certificate, the plant would be removed and destroyed because of the risk of spreading this disease to other members of the laurel family in the UK. So there are certain plants you can't bring anyway. Now, the other problem you've got is, technically speaking, fruit plants or fruit trees should be exempt from VAT when they arrive here. But customs will have a list of plants, fruit plants. Now, some of the ones that we think should be exempt, they don't agree with. So if, for example, you bought in a plant that is not commonly used for food here, but has got perhaps edible leaves or edible berries on it, if it's not considered to be a genuine acceptable fruit plant for the UK market, customs are quite within their rights to charge you VAT on those plants. Even though you're buying it as a fruit plant, you can't presume that customs will accept that, which means you'll be charged 20% on the value of the plants that they consider are not food items. And you can argue as much as you want and show them what articles you wish, for example, an aronia berry, but if it's not on their list of recognised fruit or food producing plants, you will have to pay the VAT. Now, that will also go in some cases, that also applies to the shipping as well. So if you bring, say, fly some plants in from America and the shipping costs $80 or $100 to fly them in, don't be surprised if customs doesn't decide to charge you 20% on the cost of the shipping, even if they consider that the fruit plants are exempt from VAT. And you may be charged import duty as well from some countries, depending on the deals or agreements that we have reached with various countries. So, just to give you some idea of the problems I had and the stress it caused and the time factors involved, the first thing is to obviously place your order for the plants. Make sure that the that they have got, that you've ordered from a supplier who can supply a Phyto sanitary certificate. Now, the issue I had with my plants here, and this is the process, it took them about, once they'd been dispatched from the Canary Islands or from the nursery themselves, the plants arrived here about 4 or 5 days later in the UK. Now that seems great on the face, you think, oh well, they're well on the way, and that's when it all goes wrong. When the plants arrive at the customs hub here and they look at the box and they realise they're plants, and now they should have invoices and phytosanitary certificates attached safely to the outside of the box, but I was following the tracking and it said, on the tracking it said incomplete documentation. Now you cannot get hold of customs and import departments here whatsoever. It's completely impossible, so there's nothing you can do to see what the problem is. You have to wait to be informed. Now the first step when the plants arrive here is the customs and excise contact APHA, that's APHA, and they are the Animal and Plant Health Agency. So they contact APFA and inform them that there's a plant shipment arrived for inspection. So it then takes about 4 or 5 days before APFA responds and come down to inspect the plants, and then move from customs to a holding warehouse, which could be freezing cold and drafty, and your tropicals could be sitting in a box in a freezing cold place. It's not a problem in sort of May or June, although it could work the other way. If the weather's very hot, they could be cooking in that box for 3 or 4 days, sealed in the box. So in my case, I heard nothing for a week after the plants arrived. Now then, I was contacted by someone from APFA, and they said they had a problem with the documentation. The phytosanitary certificate, which is this thing here, as you can see. So the first mistake was made by Canaries. It's a phytosanitary certificate, which is obviously Spanish, and it has to be completed for the English authorities to meet the regulations here. This certificate has to be completed in English or dual languages. It could be English and Spanish, but it has to be completed in English, the whole certificate. Otherwise they won't accept it and the plants will be rejected. So if we look at what happened on this, just to give you an example of how irritating it can be, I think you'll better see point 7 there. That's the country, the declared point of entry, and they put on it Reino Unido. Now that is meant to say United Kingdom. So that was point 7, and the other one, point 11, which is the actual declaration by the health inspector in Spain, has to be in English as well. And on this Phyto certificate, it was only in Spanish. They hadn't put the English on it as well. So the certificate was rejected by APFA, and it took them 2 days to get back to me and let me know that it wasn't satisfactory for their needs, and that I would have to go back to Canarias and get another phytosanitary certificate issued by the authorities there, which had to have English on it, or English and Spanish. Now that took about another 4 or 5 days, because obviously you're talking about the health authorities in Spain. They're not just hanging around at my beck and call. So Canarias had to contact their plant health inspectors, had to wait for them to reissue a new phytosanitary certificate with English on it, which was then emailed to me, and then I could email to the APFA department in the UK. So in the meantime, my plants were sitting over here in the inspection area for another 4 days. Now when that phyto certificate arrives and they can read through it, then your plants are inspected by our plant inspectors over here. Now at that point, if they find these certificates have a list of insects and diseases that are currently locked out of the UK. Now if they inspect your plants and find any of the plants have any of those pests which they're obviously are currently banned from getting into the UK. They don't want them to spread here. If any of your plants have those pests or diseases present on them, just found by the inspectors here, the whole lot's destroyed. So if you've bought £400 or £500 of the plants and one of them has an infestation of one of the listed pests on it, you will lose the whole lot. Now in my case I was lucky, they didn't find any pests and diseases on the plants. Now the next thing that happens, once they've been inspected and cleared by APFA, sorry, jogged the camera, your plants then go back to Customs and Excise for assessment for any import duties or taxes. Now, Customs and Excise won't have any contact with the public at all. So if they decide that you've got import duty or VAT or any other taxes to pay, they will then raise an invoice to, in my case, Royal Mail, who were the UK agents for the Spanish Post Office, excuse me, and then you will have sent out to you an invoice in the post which could take another 3 or 4 days, and when that finally arrives at your place, the onus is on you to go online and make an online payment of the outstanding VAT or duty. You can't appeal against it, and if you don't pay it, you don't get the plant. So you have to get on it and pay it straight away. Now in my case, I didn't get a demand for any further charges. It may well be that the plants in the shipment were all considered to be permitted, acceptable as fruiting plants here, and therefore I wasn't charged VAT, or they may have felt guilty because they sat around for so long before they got processed that they thought it was best to get them out to me before they were all dead. Now the whole process in my case took about 3 weeks from the plants leaving Canarias. It's not including the time I waited, which was 2 or 3 weeks before they shipped them, but it was about 3 weeks from them leaving Canarias to actually being delivered to my door. Now if you can imagine tropical fruit plants shut in a box for 3 weeks, even though the box was open and the plants were like dug through to see what state they were in, you can imagine that this is not an ideal scenario with plants. Now when we were in the EU, if you like, before they introduced these stricter regulations, although they had started obviously with plant health passports, there was a lot of risk involved with obviously the plants. They get over here a lot quicker without the problems. I did bring in plants before without any major issues, but now you're very limited on who you can buy plants from, and there is this time factor. Whether you buy them from North America, South America, Europe, you will not be getting your plants in 3 or 4 days, so you need to be very careful at the time of the year when you order them, because if you would have ordered them in December or January when it's very cold here, your plants could quite likely sit around for 2 or 3 weeks in a cold warehouse, and by the same virtue, if you order them in the middle of summer, they could be sitting around in a cardboard box in baking temperatures. So I will show you obviously in the video at the end the sad state of the plants that I received in the end. I mean, it was partly Canarias' fault because they made the mistake of sending a Phyto certificate that wasn't completed in English, which must have delayed things by another 5 or 6 days. So I probably could have got it down to under 2 weeks. But it is not a simple process of just ordering your £100 exotic plant from Florida or wherever and thinking, well, it's going to be here in 2 or 3 days because that's what the flights will take. There's a very strict process now adhered to over here by Customs, and they will, when the boxes arrive, and bearing in mind it might be 3 or 4 days before they actually look at them and notice they're even plants, because they've got literally thousands of packages coming in every day, they will then inform the plant and health, the animal and plant health agency here, who will then make an appointment to come down in several days' time and inspect your plants, at which time they could either be passed or could be destroyed. And there's no, you can't get any compensation if they get destroyed because they have an inappropriate pest on. that's the end of it. You've lost all your money. So you're going to have to be prepared to gamble on either bringing in one small plant at a time illegally, or trying to import them all legally. Now, I wanted to see what would happen, and I'm hoping that, I think at certain times of the year, and with improvements in paperwork and documentation, there may be less problems than I encountered. But basically, when I opened the box, it wasn't a pretty sight. I mean, out of the 8 plants, 1 was completely dead, and I will show in the boxing at the end what plants I bought. 3 of the plants had completely defoliated. The box was full of dead leaves, because obviously they've been sitting in a dark. These are tropical fruit plants, not deciduous plants that are sent out bare root when they're dormant. These are living, growing plants. So it's a hell of a shock to be in a box for 3 weeks and probably exposed to very cold temperatures in the warehouse and being manhandled and thrown around. But basically, 3 of the plants had completely defoliated, and they may or may not recover. And 4 of the plants had, 2 of them had some leaf damage and some tip damage, and I think they'll be okay. And actually, surprisingly, 2 of them, which was a star apple and a mango of all things, which I thought would be the worst, actually have come out looking the best. They don't look too bad at all. So the next part of the video will just be showing you the size and state of the box. And it was a heavy box, probably something like getting on for 30 kilos. So the box weighed about 50 pounds. So it probably been dropped several times. They actually sent me a picture of the box from the inspection agency in a mesh trolley, because it wasn't easy to carry it around because of the size of it, and they're putting it in a trolley. So I would suggest that you perhaps restrict yourself to ordering 3 or 4 plants so the box is smaller and easily handled if you're going to go to somewhere like Canarius. And obviously the shipping will be less, and you'll spend less money, which means risking less money. And you just need to ensure that they're reminded that the phytosanitary certificate must be sent in English, or at least English and Spanish. It's got to have those boxes filled in English, or you're going to have the same problem I had. And apparently I heard from APFA that they had another box there that's had the incorrect paperwork with it, which I think was also from Canarius. So someone else is going through the same problem as me. And it's very disappointing when your plants turn up half dead. So I've attached this video, as I said, a picture of the box and the condition it came in. Obviously it had been cut open and retaped, and I will just quickly run through the plants that came in the box, and I'm hoping I'm going to keep them alive, because I really had no intention to, after this batch, to bring any more plants in. It was enough to know that they were hanging around for 3 weeks waiting, or nearly 3 weeks, and I spent an awful lot of time on the phone and emails and websites trying to track them down, because I didn't even know where they were for about a week until I was contacted by the Plant and Animal Health Agency, because they did contact me in the end, because luckily my telephone number was on the box, on the order. Now, if they hadn't had my telephone number, I presume they would have had to have written to me, which could have taken another week. So it's just a word of warning. I wouldn't say don't buy plants from overseas, because basically you cannot get these fruit trees in the UK whatsoever, but just be prepared for a lot of heartache and stress. I'm going to say thanks for watching the video for anybody who stuck it out for the 25 minutes, and obviously the few minutes on the end for the plant, so you can just you may have just skipped to the plant unboxing at the end if that's what interests you. But this was more for my UK followers who have all been bemoaning the fact that they couldn't get grafted unusual plants over here, and been thinking of whether or not they could bring them in themselves. And I'd say, if you're brave and don't mind losing the money and the possibly losing all the plants, and go for it, but do make sure that all the appropriate paperwork and documentation is in place. And I would choose the right time of the year. I'm kind of thinking September or April, May would be okay, because it won't be too hot or too cold if they sit around for a long time. And not Christmas, because there'll be 10 times as many packages sitting and waiting. Anyway, thanks for listening to me waffle. I've probably forgotten things, but you can always ask me questions if you want to, and I'll try and answer them if I can, if I know the answer. And then enjoy the rest of the video, or not as the case may be, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if anything I'm doing is of interest. Share the video if you know anyone who might be thinking of bringing implants themselves from Europe or other countries and wants to have a go. And remember to click on the bell if you'd like updates on my next videos as they come out. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch up with you in the second part of the video. Brett out for now. Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and this is just a very short section of video that I'll either put out on its own or will incorporate it into a longer video over what's happened here. In the normal scheme of things, this would be a simple plant unboxing, but I decided to try and experiment and see if it was still possible to import plants from a supplier in Europe who was prepared to allegedly supply the correct paperwork. Unfortunately, it's turned into a very expensive disaster, which I will go into more detail in the video. I've just opened the box. I'm not even going to tell you at the moment how long these have been sitting somewhere, but unfortunately what's arrived, and I can tell you they've been sitting in customs for several weeks, basically looks like dead plants, to be honest. And it was quite an expensive investment, but I'm afraid it's all gone wrong paperwork wise. It's been an unmitigated disaster, so this video will go out as a warning to you not to rush into trying to bring in plants from Europe and thinking it's going to be an easy, straightforward thing. So I'll stop the video for the moment because I'm going to investigate what's here, because I'm going to have to make a full report on the plants to the supplier and see if there's anything salvageable at all. So I'll see you in the next part of the video. So as a follow-up to the box which I showed you, I thought I might as well, I photographed the plants already to show to the supplier, but I thought I might as well show you the state of some of them. Others may not be so bad. Now we've got here, this one here is a star fruit. As you can see, it's virtually just a twig. It has got a couple of green leaves at the top, which indicates that there's some life left in the plant. Obviously, virtually all the leaves had fallen off in the in the box, which isn't very promising for a plant that's been obviously grafted. You can see the grafting wrap here, probably only done this summer from the looks of things, so I think it's a bit cheeky to be sending the plants out so early. So we're going to see what we can do. This one unfortunately looks like absolute toast. This was my attempt to get a strawberry tree, a Muntingia calibura. They're very, very fussy, very finicky, like plenty of water. And unfortunately it's just, well, just completely dead. I'm afraid 3 weeks in 3 weeks in customs is not the way to look after a very fussy tropical, and it doesn't help that it's in a particularly small pot that is light as a feather, so it's obviously completely dried out and desiccated in the box. They're also very tender, so it could be a cold problem as well if it's been in a cold warehouse sitting on a concrete floor. Now interestingly, this one, which is probably the most tropical of everything I got at the moment, I mean, you can't always tell because sometimes the ultra tropicals can look fine and then they go rapidly downhill. This is actually a star apple or Kaimito, and this is the one that I would have expected to be most affected by the cold and the long period in the box, and actually at the moment it doesn't look too bad. I'm going to give it a good watering, although I suspect from the weight of the pot, it's not actually in much need of water. What I'm going to do is probably enclose it in a polythene bag to try and give it some humidity, but that one looks quite promising. Now on to the next plant. This, I'm afraid, is the remains of a grafted white Sapote. Variety is Wilson. Clearly not a good quality plant because you won't be able to see here, but half of the stem, you can see how it's been cut back. It's obviously suffered dieback. This side of the stem here is dead. Now that's not caused by shipping, that's caused by the plant dying back, which is why they've cut this off and tried to encourage it to shoot out the side. So frankly, selling me the plant was naughty in the first place, but as you can see, this is another one that every leaf had died off. But I'm hoping that as white Sapote a little bit tougher, that maybe with a bit of care and attention this will make a recovery. We shall see. Next one is a Guava. Now it's droopy and it has lost quite a lot of leaves. Let me lift it up, let me drop it down a bit so you can see this one better. The variety is, that's Bangkok apple. Not much to say about it except it has got green leaves on it. I'm going to give it a good soaking. In fact, it looks like it's so mild tonight, I think it's only going to get down to 15 degrees centigrade. So although it might be a shock to the plants, I think I might put them outside and give them a good watering, and then put them in polythene bags tomorrow. So that's Bangkok apple, that Guava. I've got another Guava as well, which possibly looks slightly better than the Bangkok apple. These dried leaves may have been like that anyway, but Guavas are quite tough. And this one is White Supreme. Now, I have no idea if that's similar to the Mexican cream. It may well be, but I'm hopeful that I can probably save the Guava as well. Now, another one which surprised me is a mango, and I have terrible troubles with mangoes and find them to be really, really fussy, and yet for whatever reason this one has survived its 3 weeks entombed in a cardboard box quite well. This variety, grafted variety, is Alfonso. I wasn't going to try any more mangoes because they always die on me, but I thought I might try one more just to see how it goes. And the final plant is another grafted star fruit, and again it's got a couple of leaves on it that are still green. Not sure if putting it outside overnight is a good idea given the weather's not probably a little bit breezy for it, but I think the best thing to do to give them a good soaking is to get them outside and see what happens. So obviously I will, this will be the postscript to the video I'm going to do, where I'm going to talk about the problems with importing and most specifically the problems that I had with importing. It turned out into a complete disaster, and I could see I could easily lose half the plants, and to be honest they could all have been dead. But I think the best thing to do is probably I'll do some updates in the future whether they live or die, and then this video will be closing off the talk I do about the costings involved and what went wrong with the paperwork, which was nothing to do with me, I hasten to add. That was to do with the exporters, and then the problems you're going to get with customs and plant health inspection departments over here and the time it takes them to operate. So if you've watched the whole video, thanks very much. Please give me a thumbs up. Obviously, please share the video if you think it might be useful to anybody who's thinking of bringing in plants and doesn't know the pitfalls involved. Please subscribe to my channel, and remember to click on the bell if you'd like to be updated on new videos, including whether or not any of these tropicals survive. I'll catch up with you all soon. Brett out for now.